it's interesting that I'm watching, especially in the online space, when we're talking about medicating, say, menopause. Everybody gets angry. That's not okay. We shouldn't be
Mhm.
doing that. No SSRIs. Let's learn something different. I can't believe the system is doing this. And then when you see the same thing about postpartum, everyone gets rageful. The fact that you said that. No, we need SSRIs. What are you talking about? This is a life and death scenario.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spoil Your Baby podcast. Today, I'm here with a longtime friend, Maranda Bower. She is a biological researcher, a best-selling author, and the founder of Postpartum University, which is an incredible resource and place of learning. So welcome, Miranda. I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah, likewise. It's always such a pleasure speaking with you, Greer. We were just sitting here for like 20 plus minutes chatting about other things, but
Mhm.
I love our conversations and I'm so excited to be here. So thank you.
Me too. I feel like we're both showing up in this world for moms as best we can and trying to have as much fun for ourselves and our
Yeah.
families along the ride.
Yeah.
Is lovely. So your expertise is in postpartum health, which I know so many of our moms are interested in, and can also find it hard to find the right places to get that support and information. Why don't we start by sort of introducing you and telling us why you're so passionate about postpartum health and how we can change it?
Well, I'm a mom of four, first and foremost. And I started my journey with, you know, health and wellness and all things postpartum when I experienced postpartum, starting with my first. And it was an experience that I did not prepare for. I had prepared so much for labor and birth and the pregnancy itself. And my background has always been science and research. And for whatever reason, this completely skipped my peripheral. I had no knowledge, no information whatsoever about this. And my son is 15 years old, so he'll actually be 16 later this year. So 16 years ago, that was a long time. We were not talking about postpartum. It was certainly not in any research. There was not very much information, and actually, it was a fairly taboo conversation to talk about depression. Right, like
Yeah.
that was just not
Yeah.
something that we had a
We kind of
conversation
take
about.
that for granted now, don't we? That
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
so much easier for people. I'm sure it's still hard in many ways, but it's so much easier for people to talk about now.
we had Facebook back then, and we had Instagram back then, but there was no conversations about this. You were not finding an account that had any data, any information, nothing along the sort. So it was very interesting, that paradigm, that time where that was occurring and recognizing that I knew nothing about this. And I experienced extreme postpartum depression and anxiety. I was having panic attacks. I lost my partner. I had to move in with my family. Like I was desperate for support and I was terrified that I was going to lose my son in this process. It was I still don't understand how people don't recognize that, and I'm so grateful that in today's world that we're having these conversations, and it's so much easier to see in others that these experiences happen and that women are experiencing this at such a high rate. But that's really how I began my research. I was like, I got to get out of this. I got to get better for my son, not for me, because I didn't care about myself. When you're in that very depressed state, getting out of bed for yourself is impossible, right? But I could do it for myself. And that's who I was doing it for. And that's where I really started to focus my attention. Who am I? What am I doing here? Why do I feel like crap? And the research was very few and far in between. There was hardly anything out there. And I started diving deeper into things like anthropological studies. Like I wanted to know about other cultures. Surely, like this is just 1 in 7 at the time was the statistic for women who experience postpartum depression. Now it's around 1 in 3 in today's society. But I had to know why. Why was that happening? And so that was really the starting point of my journey. I became a postpartum doula. I went back to school. I became a childbirth educator, and I was absolutely, enthralled with this whole world of everything related to birth and postpartum, like what comes after. And within a couple of years, I had been working with moms. I was attending births. I was supporting them in their breastfeeding journeys. I was helping them cook meals. I was already seeing the difference within my body. By this time, I think I had met my husband. Now we've been married 11 years. We had our second child, and this was just like an ongoing thing. And then I started having providers come to me saying, "You're working with my client. You're working with my patient. I've seen them for 4 years. They've been on thyroid medications, antidepressants with me, all of the things. They have not gotten better. And then they work with you, and I'm having to wean them off these medications. Like,
Mhm.
what is happening? What is
Miracles.
going on?"
Yeah, amazing.
And they wanted to know this information, right? I know in my own experience, my providers never had this information. It
Mm.
was called normal. It was, this is welcome to motherhood. This is
Yeah,
what you can experience.
yeah,
Even my friends were telling me that, right? When I
yeah.
would talk to other moms, oh, it's just how it is, right? And it's so sad and so frustrating that we don't have the resources. We don't have the right testing. We don't have the right information to support women's bodies during this physiological, psychological, hormonal, emotional shift and transition. And so, what I was doing felt really good. It felt really right. I was lots of trial and error trying to figure out, okay, what is it that's going to work for my body, and how can I apply it to the women that I was working with regularly and consistently in my own work. And kind of I developed a framework basically of like what it's going to take to heal our postpartum bodies.
Mhm.
And I think the beautiful thing is it has transformed so much over the last, oh gosh, I want to say almost 15 years of being in business, having this, I call it the postpartum restorative method. And then we have providers who are now sharing this information, who are teaching this information, who are certifying through us to get the education that they never received, and still to this day have never received
Yeah.
for their care. If they're a therapist or a counselor, you have to go to a secondary learning facility to understand the postpartum brain.
Yeah.
If you're a nutritionist or a dietitian, you're not going to get that information or education through the clinical practices, through your bachelor's and your master's. There's nothing there for postpartum. So coming into Postpartum University is where they're getting that information. And that's changing the world. That's how I see it. You
Incredible.
heal the
Yeah.
mothers, you heal the world. Like
Huge
that's the
ripple
way it
effects
goes.
for all those practitioners. I'm curious, with the anthropological studies you looked at, did you find what did you find there, and has that influenced your approach?
Oh, 1,000%. I think so much of my research started with the anthropological studies and looking at other cultures around the world, because they've been doing this for thousands of years. And right. And in our modern day, we call it anecdotal studies. We call it, we don't put a lot of value into this research and to what other cultures have been doing for a long time. And oftentimes these cultures don't have the scientific knowledge, right? They're not going to talk about, Ayurvedic, for example, they talk about digestive fire, right? And postpartum, you don't have that digestive fire. And modern science, that digestive fire, which is absolutely accurate, you do not have the enzymes and gastric acids necessary to break down those foods as you once did in pregnancy or pre-pregnancy. And so they use different terms that are more, kind of unscientific and in our worlds. And so we don't necessarily correlate, that with actual real evidence to support our bodies. But what we know from those is that there are very specific rules that these other cultures all have created around postpartum, which they have valued and that they all share. So you might be, studying a culture in China, and you might be studying a culture in Africa, and all of these different places, and they all share these similarities, like these universal postpartum truths is what I call them, about how we have to manage and care for our bodies. And the way in which they do it might be different, right? They might, one culture might do fish in their recipes and their meals more than they do, say, chicken, right? But the concepts, the way in which they cook that food is the same. The reason why they do that is the same, right? The use of herbs is another example. They might have different herbs depending on where they are in the world, but their use in the postpartum period are critical. The way we show up, all of these other components, they're all the same. And the reason behind it is the same. And so when we start breaking down those components and looking at it, and then we can start applying what we know from science into those frameworks and being like, this is why it works.
Yeah.
This is why they've been telling us for thousands of years why this is the method to support our bodies. And I think that's one of the reasons why my work has grown to what it is because I've been able to help kind of almost infiltrate into the scientific world, and these doctors and medical providers who've been trained. It makes sense to them, and it feels a lot more aligned, and they don't feel kooky or like they're doing something woo woo. It's putting science into their hands so that they feel safe to share this information with their clients and work.
It's so exciting, and it also makes me so angry on a level too, because of how many mothers don't have access to this, right? Like I know from our other, work and things we've done together that so much of the advice and kind of not even the advice, just the sort of like common knowledge that, people share postpartum, like drinking a lot of smoothies and, for example, like, cause you mentioned digestion, that just sort of like what is normal for people. And so much of what is normal in North America, at least, is actually working against mothers. Right. And so that does make me upset too, right? That we still have, we're making progress, but there's so many ways mothers are being let down postpartum.
Yes.
Right. And
yes,
needlessly feeling, we're going to all feel, feelings of depression and anxiety through as we transition to be a mother and going through that process. But the severity, right, is really, really amplified by the way mothers
absolutely.
What'd you say?
And is it really depression? Because I think oftentimes we put this clinical name on it when really it's not depression. It's you mourning your previous life.
Exactly.
It's not depression. It's you being left alone and that's sending a biological warning throughout your entire body saying, wait a second, that's not safe, right? Because throughout generations before, we were not left alone. That's a sign of danger, especially if you have a new baby. Or understanding our intrusive thoughts, which is really the brain patterns supporting us and taking care of our babies. It's when we panic and we don't understand them that heighten them and make them reoccur. And then we just created a system and a loop that just feeds it rather than helps it understand that, oh, wait a second. Understanding this is my body's way of protecting my baby, the more mammalian or even I hear reptilian brain piece, right? And it's not that it's a bad thing. I just know that I can trust my body. My body, it's doing its thing. And that's a beautiful thing. I don't have to get hyped up, but my nervous system doesn't have to ramp up because I had this horrible thought. I can just know that it's trying to support me and my baby, and that's great. Absolutely. And then what you do is you send a signal to your body saying, that's fabulous. It's amazing. Thank you so much. And you move about your day rather than having more reoccurring intrusive thoughts because now you're on high alert.
Completely. So I was going to say there's so many aspects to this, right? We're talking about postpartum wellness, so many, like nutrition is a huge one. And actually nutrition and absorption of what you are eating, right?
Yes, career. Thank you.
And I see so many moms, not intentionally kind of starving themselves postpartum, not knowing what how to prepare, how to put what to put in their body, how to prepare it to, for a good absorption. Um, and then there's, we'll talk about that a little bit, but then there's also that social piece, right? You talk about us being so alone, us knowing deep down that we should be cared for and accompanied and witnessed through that time in so many ways, and that reaction to it. And then that identity, that huge identity change that's coming that no one really prepared us for or supports or talks about. And it's so much that we're doing. And I think the typical response, some even though things have changed since when you had your first, is like, let's, get you on some antidepressants and send you on your way, essentially, is what generally happens. Right?
It's so sad, but that is what we do. That is our number one method of support in postpartum is antidepressants. Just as, birth control is the number one support tool for anyone who has any sort of female feelings and
Yeah.
uh, issues whatsoever starting
Yes.
in puberty.
Yes. Jane Hardwick Collins, I took a in-person um, workshop with her this summer, and she is like a beautiful kind of, just discussion around this, that every part of our womanhood is being medicated and numbed, like you just said, right? Our periods are
Yes.
being medicated, our births being medicated, our postpartum's being medicated, and then our menopause is being
Mm.
medicated, and then our death gets medicated too, right?
Mm.
So we're like missing out on all of these transformations of ourself, and we don't have to. We don't have to. We can turn away from it.
That's so
Um,
beautiful. That's so
yeah,
beautifully said.
yeah, yeah, and we can
Yeah,
heal from it
it's
too if it's happened
interesting
to
that
us.
we do that to ourselves, and it's interesting that I'm watching, especially in the online space, when we're talking about medicating, say, menopause. Everybody gets angry. That's not okay. We shouldn't be
Mhm.
doing that. No SSRIs. Let's learn something different. I can't believe the system is doing this. And then when you see the same thing about postpartum, everyone gets rageful the fact that you said that. No, we need SSRIs. What are
Mm.
you talking about? This is a life and death scenario,
Yeah.
right? And it's such an interesting concept because now we have this baby, right? And we want our babies to be taken care of, but we also have all of these societal pressures and stigmas around what it means to have depression. I think in our world today, we've normalized it is what we've done in the last 15 years. We've gone from this is taboo
Mhm.
to guess what? This is normal and it's expected. And this
Yeah.
is what you're going to have to deal with. And that's okay because we've got a pill for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so many moms enter into that phase feeling so depleted, so exhausted, so burnt out, so little support that they couldn't imagine, like, what else could I do? I can't do anything. I'm so overwhelmed with life and that this is my only option.
Yeah.
This is my only option. And
Yeah.
and that's sad that this is quote unquote our only option. This is
It
the only thing that
is.
women feel like is supporting them when they need so much more.
Yeah. I was gonna say too, the pressure of separation from baby is the
Mhm.
other enormous threat to that postpartum brain
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
moms, right? So that's another factor on top where they're not getting the oxytocin, they're not um, benefiting from the relationship with the baby either because of some other, not for everybody, but for some people as well. And I would wish for every mother for this time of their life to be one of the most joyous, awe-inspiring, celebratory, incredible experiences. Not to say it doesn't have its challenges, of course it does, but mothers can also expect, and I think they should expect more than, oh, I'm definitely going to get postpartum depression and go on an SSRI and it's going to be terrible and I just have to like white knuckle it through those years where I have a baby, to this is an opportunity to transform, to heal, to learn, to expand myself as a human being, and to really be there for another in a way I've never been before. And with that right support, we can promise that to people in a lot of ways.
Oh, yes.
Um, and we've
Yeah.
seen it, right? You see it all the time. I see it all the time.
Yes. So
Yes,
true.
completely.
I
So
think we
sorry, go ahead.
just need the right support. And I think that's key. And we've gotten so far away from understanding what that right support, quote unquote, is. What is it? What does that
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. It's so important. Did I miss any of the root causes? Any of the root causes of sort of any sort of suffering postpartum? I feel like
Yeah, I think you nailed so much. The postpartum restoration method talks about physiological restoration, right? So that's one,
yes.
like making sure our bodies actually, your pelvic floor, all of that. It's super important that you
Yeah.
have the physical support in at home.
Yeah. I think
Uh,
that's sort of the bedrock, right? Like making
yeah,
sure
yeah.
that
You
you're
should be able to
not
take a
depleted.
shower by yourself without having to worry about your baby. Like, you should not have to ask that. That is
Yes,
not
and
a
feel no
normal
guilt
thing.
about it, and yes.
Right, right. Somebody else could come in and take care of your dishes, things like that. That basic foundational level of support. You touched on nutrition, neurological regulation, and so much of comes with baby, and there's so many aspects of that that we can get in. Rhythmic recovery is what I call it, but that's also like getting into who we are as women and this uh, rhythm of the way in which we live our monthly cycles, our yearly cycles, our circadian rhythms, right? Understanding those at
Mhm.
the foundational level and actually living in that way, because our go, go, go world is very masculine and it
Yeah,
does not work for women's bodies. And then that
love it.
identity integration. Who am I? What does this mean? How am I transforming as a human being and stepping into this new role? What does that mean for my life? What does it
Mhm.
mean for me as a mother or a sister or as a daughter? All of those things kind of come up in that. So yeah, you touched on everything.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's really important, and I mean, both of us have been in this field for so long, and we've been talking about it for so long. Um, but for new moms, this is all brand new information, right? And we really have not, you know, you've been practicing in this area for about 15 years. I've been about 10, going on 11. It's still not really out there in the way that it should be.
And for providers too, right? As moms, we're learning and we're
Yes.
constantly learning, but there's no providers there for moms either. And I think
Yes.
that's probably one of the hardest parts, is because we need so much support. Mothers need mothering, and there's
Yes.
no one to mother us through this period,
Yeah.
no one to hold our hand. I mean, you look back, traditionally speaking, you had your grandmothers and your aunties and your sisters. They came in and supported you, and they held your hand, and they taught you how to breastfeed it, which was something that you saw all the time. They help you walk through, things. They made you food. They drew you an herbal bath. They made you
Mhm.
your teas. They let you sleep. All of these components was done by the people of your community who knew. And
Yes.
here we are. We don't have any of that. And so
Mm.
we're having to make that happen for ourselves, which is the absolute most hardest thing in the whole world.
Yes.
But this is what I share with moms all the time. You get through this and you support yourself as much as you can, then you can build systems for others, which is what I normally see, right? When a mom
Mhm.
feels this level of support and she integrates what she sees here and she feels so good, like, what's the first thing she wants to do? She wants to share it with the whole
Oh,
world,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's why MLM and network marketing took off, because, if there was something amazing, moms in particular were like, this thing did it. And
Mhm.
I feel so much better and I have to share it with the world.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, you're not only helping other moms, you're helping the next generation. You're helping your own children. You're
Mhm.
helping their children. And one day, maybe our children, but maybe our grandchildren will have that support system. They will have those providers and those grandmothers, obviously, and maybe even those sisters and such to come into their homes and support them in the way in which you so needed to help.
Yeah. And I think if someone's lucky, they might get a little bit in the weeks after birth, possibly. Because we also have this idea that moms might need help for, a few weeks, like, that 6-week postpartum checkup at the doctor somehow is some sort of landmark in ending your postpartum in some places. Which is why I always say too, like you have a baby for 3 years and actually you really need that care that entire time. Would you say? I mean, I always share this. One of my good friends, when I was pregnant, said to me, postpartum was 4 years for me. And she's like, her child was like 5 or 6 then. She's like, yeah, it was about 4 years. And I was like, what are you talking? I was like, okay, that's so my brain had to like do some gymnastics to figure that out. I was like, got it. Cool. Like, thank you for telling me that. But that was the only person um who really
Yeah.
told me that. And I absolutely felt that in some ways. Actually, I think mine was 5 years. I think 5 was my time for reemerge, like flapping my wings as the butterfly, reemerging from my cocoon postpartum. Do you want to talk about that a little bit too?
Yeah.
That time
Yeah.
frame?
We have studies that show an upwards of 6 years, right?
Yeah.
And why does it take so long? It's not just the current postpartum state, right? As we know it, which the 6-week mark was marked by the uterus returning to its pre-pregnancy state. So
Yeah.
it was developed by a man
What a
who said that
surprise.
this was the deadline because the uterus returns to its pre-pregnancy state. It was actually just very, and actually, I'm fairly certain that if you go, no, they recently changed it. Very, very recently changed the Wikipedia site of what postpartum means. Uh, just last year, it was you're over postpartum in 6 weeks, and your hormones return to their original postpartum and right. And everybody
Hilarious.
could laugh at that. Every mother in the world could laugh hysterically to that.
Yeah.
But also, how many of us, myself included, felt like, wait, there must be something wrong with me
Yeah. Why
because
isn't that happening? Yeah.
why am I supposed to be back to my normal self in 6 weeks? No, totally man-made, literally by a man, is not accurate information. We now know that hormones don't generally return to, their pre-pregnancy state to 3 to 4 year mark, especially if you're breastfeeding.
Mhm.
Your brain changes, the neurological changes, and I know that you could speak heavily to this, 2 to 3 years postpartum,
Yeah.
also very dependent on where you are in breastfeeding as well. And
Mhm.
so we have all of these functional systems within our body that are actually taking many, many years to go back. But identity, right? And finding our rhythm as a female again takes an upwards of 4 to 6 years. And that's usually, if you think about it too, that's when our children start to get a lot more independent of
Yes.
us, right? That's when they often go back to school during that time,
Mhm.
whether it's kindergarten at a local school or homeschool, whatever it is, right? There's this independent space that develops.
Yeah.
I was actually talking with someone very recently who works with cranial sacral development and myofascial release,
Mhm.
fascia. I always get that wrong. And she was saying that there's actually an energetic component between our fascia and our baby's fascia, that
Mm.
where we will be able to physically touch our children and understand what's wrong. If we are really tuned in, that is, it sends signals through the brain, and then our body is able to, oh, this is why my baby is crying. Or just listening to a certain tune, like your body is so in tune with your babies and vice versa. Our babies are so in tune with us, right?
Yeah.
And that separation starts happening right around the 6-year mark. Not that we are not in tune with our babies, not that we won't know, but that the fascia connection at that time is starting to separate to allow ourselves to be independent human beings from one another.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful thing. That's the life cycle that is.
Completely. Yeah.
So it does take a long time. We are often postpartum and pregnant at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Like
I
I
was
know
gonna
that
say,
I
like,
was
you
in
have
my
multiple
experience.
kids. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And a lot of people say, well, you're postpartum for life. And I also believe that. But what I speak to specifically is that these physiological and psychological changes specifically take 5 to 6 years.
Yeah. And that completely is evident, right? In the relationship that we see, right?
Yes.
That you can see that in a physical way too, which is really beautiful. And then the last thing I think we should touch on for people listening is like, don't rush it. Like there's that pressure that's so strong of like, speed it up, hurry it up. Like, what's going on? Your baby's this many months. Like, and that's kind of funny. I can say it in like with a smile, but actually that makes me really angry. It's so intrusive on that really, really important relationship. And that's something that we have to pay attention to too. I would say.
So I think you are so right, and that we are so rushed in our society. And I think again, like that's the man-made, very, very masculine approach that we have to get back to work. We have to get our bodies back. That's a very common one.
Mhm.
We have to lose all the weight and look good and do all of these things. And we have to do it very quickly because that's very telling of who we are as a woman, and whether or not we are deserving of love and attention and all of the things. And that's not accurate in the least bit. Not accurate in the least bit. And I think in postpartum, we start to come to see that. And oftentimes during this time, we are confronted with all of these things like, oh, I don't want to go back to work, or I don't want to be this person, or what does this business actually mean to me? Or maybe I don't really like these things, or how did I have relationships with these people?
All right. Well, Miranda, thank you so much for sharing your incredible wisdom and expertise with us today. I know moms will be so, so nourished by this conversation. For people who want to know more about you and your offerings, let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, you can go to my podcast, Postpartum University podcast. You can find me online at postpartumu.com. We have so much resources mainly for providers and for those advocates with moms, but there's so much that moms can learn from tuning into those conversations. And I always recommend doing just that and sharing that information with your provider, asking the right questions. All of that can be so helpful.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So good to be with you.
Thank you. Likewise.